Hello ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the channel. A couple of videos ago I made a video, to be sure that I'm not using the word video too much, about the E4, no, the E5 thrust in the Sicilian and its consequences in various lines. And that particular video has received a lot of positive comments and feedback from the community, and a lot of people said that it was a bit of an eye-opener. And feeding into that, a person who is definitely not Philip also recommended me to create a video series about openings where we talk about the whys and the hows, but more importantly the whys. Explain what's happening rather than just dumping lines onto, you know, chess players' head. Let's explain what's going on the chessboard and why is the actual move the move that we need to play. And in that spirit, I'm going to approach a lot of openings now, and I'm going to try my absolute best to cover various openings. It may depend on what the community requests, also what I feel comfortable with, and so on. But today, to fall back onto a safe ground, but also to try to please a very wide audience, and that was the word I was after. I'm going to start with the Sicilian, and even with the Sicilian, I'm going to start off with the early deviations, which, by the way, is almost always the best way to learn openings. Start from the simple, go towards the deep. And we are going to look at the early gambits. And so I'm going to start off with this banana, or rather the lemon, the B4, which I don't even know what it's called. It's some B4 gambit in the Sicilian. Now, before I even go into how to handle this situation, I would like to give you a bit of a rev up about mindset and how to approach these gambits, because a lot of players, especially on club level, when they receive a gambit like that, they are instantly taken aback. They are out of their comfort zone. They know it's a gambit. I mean, let's face it, it's hanging for free. And so their initial instinct is that, oh, I'm falling into some prep, I can't take it. And they play some utter lemon like that. Now that is bzz, bzz, gzz, no, stop, don't, nah, not happening. Like, that kind of mindset needs to be raised 120%. Okay, so if your opponent chucks at you an early gambit, and the earlier it is, the more the rule applies, almost inevitably the best thing you can do is to accept it. Okay, B4 is by no means the best move here. In fact, it's a pretty bad one. Yet we are worried about it. If they play knight f3, which is an awesome move, which is called like, yeah, that's theory, I know, I'm awesome, I will play my theory. That doesn't make any sense. So we are more than happy to march into war against one of the most dangerous lines in the Sicilian. But when they chuck some random rubbish into our face, we go like, oh, that looks dangerous. That's a gambit pawn. I shouldn't take that. Let's just go take it safe. Now that's not safe. Safe is to take it, because safe is what punishes it. Safe is when you are in control. After D6 or B6 or various other kinds of lemons and tropical fruits, you are not in control at all. You are in control if you confidently go like, thank you, that was a free pawn for nothing. Let's take it from here. But of course, I will take it from here. And I will show you how best this could be approached. Usually here they play A3. The idea is that when we take the A3, which you shouldn't, by the way, not that there's anything wrong with it fundamentally, but yeah, when we take A3, then they usually play an instant D4 and then get a quite large center, blah, 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 blah. This is still totally fine for black. But let's be extremely pragmatic about things. D5, striking in the center right away. What is the objective of this gambit from white's point of view? To conquer the whole entire center. So at the first given opportunity, when you have time to do so, you instantly counterpunch the center. This should be the mindset almost every single time you are playing against some lemony sideline in any opening at all. That, okay, I need to strike at the center as soon as I can. Now if they take d5, which they pretty much have to, we take back with the queen, and here we have got a very sneaky attack which is based on this check, which creates this very nasty double attack, and so white has to tread carefully here. A takes b4 is not possible, so more often than not the move here is knight f3. And my favorite line against this, although there are many ways to treat it, and there are many ways to hang on to the material, but my favorite way is to play e5. And the idea is to actually not to really care about the material considerations, but to accelerate development and to make sure that we are really firmly present in the center. The most common response is simply to take the pawn on b4, which is very logical because it introduces the threat of knight c3. So we take the bishop, the pawn on b4 with the bishop, and now there are various ways to attack said bishop. Usually they play c3, and then you can just drop back. I would like to mention that e4 counterpunch is playable here, but it leads to murky positions that yeah, you may or may not want to play. So bishop e7 very simply back, and now c3 is being a huge problem for white, because that's where they wanted to put the knight. And note that we are still a pawn up. Knight a3 is a common move here to try to come in from this side, and again, central thrust. Kicking the knight out. Look at who is in charge. Yeah, so it's not like I'm defending here. That is not part of this whole shebang. Okay, after knight b5 I need to come back, admittedly, but that was going to happen anyway. And when the knight goes wherever, you start developing. In fact, you complete development, and thank you very much. Come again. Your b4 opening has been absolutely smashed. Okay, so one more time. We take it. They come at us with b4. We take it. They come at us with a3, we go d5. If they push through, then we pretty much can do whatever we please. Knight c6 seems best. And after pawn d4, various moves are very good here. Basically, we are playing a superb French as black. An advanced French where we haven't played e6 yet, which means that the bishop is still good to develop. And we are already a pawn up. That's it. So these openings need to be understood in context. Okay, so I show you what exactly I'm talking about here, just so that you can relate to it better. So look at this. This is a French main line, right? This is one of the main lines of the French, called the advanced French, which is a very respectable line, really, for white. So there is nothing wrong with it. Now we are playing something very similar to that. Imagine that in this position we play queen b6, except that we haven't played e6. That's a plus because the bishop is still good to go. We are already a pawn up. That's another plus. And third, a central pawn is hanging. I shall say no more. That's it. So you need to understand that sometimes openings evolve into structures more like anything else. When you hear people like, yeah, that's a King's Indian structure or that's a French structure, you need to at least have a little knowledge of set structures, even if you don't play them, so that when a similar scenario occurs, then you have a reference point, like I just modeled it, that, yep, that's normal. So if instead of this we have this, then you go like, yeehaw! And remember, like I told you, a lot of players would instantly say no to this from the get-go. Why not? Thank you for allowing me that fabulous stuff to happen. So e5 is not really serious. They need to take knight f3, e5. There was another move I wanted to... Oh yeah, I know. c4 is another move here. And again, this looks annoying at first. You don't take it because that enhances white's development. You pull the queen back. Now to e6, not so much to defend the pawn really. I could have come back to d8. The pawn is not capturable because of queen d4 hangs a few stuff. The reason why we play queen e6 is because this white d4 can't happen because I take it with a check. And if they still do it, which I think they should in the spirit of really making it a gambit, takes bishop e to knight c6 is playable. Probably better still is a move like queen b6. Now we are getting a little bit edgy about too many queen moves, but now it's gonna stop. So after, for example, castles, we just go knight c6, knight f6, bishop e7, and castles. And note that you are more than okay to give back material here because you are exactly 17 pawns up. So if we finish development from here on, we won. It's that simple. So if they chuck something like rook e1 at you, you go knight f6. Which at first sight again is like, whoa, double check. Yeah, where exactly? Bishop d3, pff, big deal, I block it. Bishop f1, big deal, I block it. So these positions need to be assessed very accurately and played in that fashion. So last but not least, yeah, there's nothing much else here going on, I think. So e5, and I did tell you that after take, bishop takes is super handy because it hits c3, and if c3, then we pull back with the bishop, and after knight a3, we had e4, knight b5, queen back, and happy days. And that's it. And again, it might have been very fast for you to follow, and it might have been way too fast to memorize, but that is precisely what I don't want from you to do. If this is new to you, I don't want you to memorize it. I want you to understand what's going on. What's going on is that A, we accept a total lemon sacrifice because that is how sacrifices are best treated. Then we play very central conscious play. Or we play very centrally consciously, even though that's horrible, the way it sounds. And then we just develop. And look at how beautifully all of our moves make sense. And we're almost already ahead in development when playing against the gambit that is designed to beat us in the department of development. So be brave. Take these pawns and punish your opponents for playing unsound chess. Once again, your response here cannot be the, whoa, I'm scared, I'm falling for some prep. Like, what prep? Like, if this was good, everyone would play b4 under the sun, right? But no one does, really, on any decent chess level. So you can be very safe to assume that actually this should be taken. And this kind of mindset really need to be acquired, or if you don't have it, to be changed. Because this is basically the, my opponent plays lemons, I need to punish them. Because you know it's bad. And if you don't react against the bad move with the best move, then it's no longer bad. Alright? Okay, so that was the, I don't know what it's called, the b4 gambit. And now we are going to move on to a new chapter, which is going to be the Morra. And I will call the previous one the second b4 lemon. Yep. So b4 lemon Morra. Now the Morra is already a more respectable opening. And if you just look at what it does in comparison to b4, you already have a feeling that you need to take this far more seriously than the previous one. Because if we accept it, we should. Again, and we take this and they take back, then if you compare this position to the b4 lemon, you realize that a knight has been developed, both bishops are good to come out, and we still haven't moved a piece yet. So this seems to have far more valid reasons to be a pawn down, this setup, this concept from White's point of view, than the previous one did. And even here, it's really, really questionable, and I really hate to hurt the feelings of Mark Esseman and his love child, the Morra. By the way, he has written an absolutely fantastic book on it, so if you are a Morra aficionado, then that is your Bible. But nonetheless, with all due respect to Mark, yeah, this needs to be taken and it needs to be accepted. Now, I have got a secret line against the Morra that I would prefer not to share here. But I will show you one that I honestly and wholeheartedly believe that is a totally fine variation. And that is, again, that we develop and then we play e6. Now, the reason why we play here e6 is because we want to play an early bishop out and we want to chuck this knight on e7. And I shall probably explain a few things about this first right away. So one of the most common problems in the Morra as black is that if we play for d6, after bishop c4, we can't really play knight f6 here because of this very filthy e5 push. And what it does is that if you take it with the knight, knight takes, bishop, pawn takes, and bishop takes f7, picks up the queen. And if we take it with the pawn, then after queen takes queen, knight takes, and knight b5, this is looking really, really ugly. Like black is on the verge of losing here. So for this reason, this otherwise ideal looking setup is actually not playable against the Morra, and the bishop here is really, really powerful. And even if I play e6 first, after castles, knight f6, queen e2, bishop e7, rook d1, we arrive in one of the main lines of the Morra, where white seems to have quite a bit of compensation due to the pressure on the d6 pawn and the undeveloped stage of the queen side. So to avoid all this shebang, I recommend you play e6. And if they still continue with bishop c4, then we are going to enter a very interesting line that's going to look like this. We play a6. This is a very useful move to play because occasionally we can expand with b5 and bishop b7, and it also denies all kinds of knight in shebangs. And when castles happens, now comes the second thing that we need to understand. We play knight e7. Now I would like to urge you to understand that this is the exception, not the rule. In the vast majority of openings we play, even in the Sicilian, this knight should go here. The reason why it doesn't is because now we would walk into unpleasant e5 stories, where after knight g4, bishop f4, this knight is really wayward, development is very difficult, the whole position looks just ugly. It's two knights against the whole entire developed army. This is the reason why people play the Morra as white. Okay, so the best way to approach it, in my opinion, in this particular line is to play knight e7 instead, and the knight is going to come to g6, covering the crucially important e5 square. And now, I don't even know actually what Mark's book recommends here. I would be very curious to see it. But from what I can tell, against all white's responses, we seem to have a sufficient setup for black. So if bishop f4 with the idea of occupying d6, which is usually super annoying in the Morra, we grab the tempo on the bishop. And when the bishop comes in, we start trading like mad. Because let's face it, we are a pawn up. It's the ugly truth. So if we can trade like mad, we shall. And if the queen goes back, we play b5, bishop back, and either castle or bishop b7, and we essentially caught up in development. We will have a minor discomfort related to this d pawn, but it really isn't the end of the world by any stretch. So much so that the computer actually no longer wants to castle here. By the way, he wants h5 or even knight a5. Rook c8 is a move here, but it's very apparent that white doesn't quite have enough compensation for the sacrificed pawn. And all of our pieces are quite reasonably placed. The fact that we're covering e5 is really useful. Yeah, like the whole position just looks really nice. I'm trying to find a line where white actually gets to execute this. I really like h5 here. I really do. And a really cool motif here is that after queen c7 we get to play d6. Although what happens if queen takes? Rook d8. And the better endgame again, because the knight is going to come e5, and although our material is equal, but our king is centralized, theirs is not, and we will have an awesome boss knight on e5. But this is already middle game. All I want you to get is that if the bishop comes to f4, it's okay to allow it to come into d6, because it will be traded off, and then the queens are facing off. The real disaster normally strikes in the Morra when there is a knight in here. That we can't live with. But due to the fact that we kind of eliminated it with a6, this can't happen. Or even that. And so we are doing splendidly fine. Now I need to go a little bit further back, so I'm going to play it out again move by move. So after e6, a little bit more prudent, in my opinion, for white to play an instant bishop f4 instead of bishop c4, which doesn't really stand too well on this diagonal, having black played e6. Now, black instantly wants to come in, and that's okay. Sorry, white instantly wants to come in. And now our strategy is slightly different. We are going to play bishop b4 here. This is a quite annoying pin on the knight, and on the odd occasion, but very rarely we can even take and block off the C files, so that the usual rook C1 and then knight somewhere and pressure on D and C files is not applicable. The other very important concept behind this move is that we again want to play knight e7, but the immediate knight e7 miserably fails to knight b5 and we are out. That's it. So make sure that once again, why do we do it? Understanding our moves, because it's a pin. So now knight e7 is good to come. It's that simple. So as soon as you understand why you do what you do, you are good to go. And again, the most logical move in my opinion here for white is bishop d6, occupying the weak square. And we treat it again in the exact same way. Take knight e7, and we are essentially going to transition into the other line, although rook d1 probably is a bit more accurate. Now again, this looks a bit dirty, so it's better to stop that first. Bishop goes somewhere. If c4, then we are virtually in the same line as before, where we play knight g6 and then queen e7, and the days are happy. And that's it. This is it. So remember that the goals and the concepts behind this knight e7, knight g6 shebang is that we would like to avoid e5 hitting our knight with the tempo. But in an ideal world, we also would love to, really love to, chuck eventually a knight in here, potentially trade a pair of pieces, and just be in control of that beautiful e5 square. That was a mouse slip. I think a student of mine once played here bishop g5 as white. And quite ironically, even after f6, black's position was totally tenable. Absolutely fine. Because once again, it actually supports our intentions to eventually put a piece on e5. No worries. So now we can actually again go and develop even outside of these two squares here or even here, and then castles. And that's it. One more thing I need to show you is that if in this position, after knight e7, they play bishop e3. It's a sneaky move that once again, let's have a look at what it does. Let's try to understand, not blindly just play moves that we think we remember. Knight g6 now is a horrific mistake. The move that was awesome before ruins it all now. Why? Because bishop e3 is targeting this square. So now white's intention is that if I play knight g6 like a doozy, then after knight a4, lo and behold, I could be in substantial trouble if the knight comes in. Better still if after they play bishop b3 first, and then this threat becomes really, really annoying. Actually, according to the ancient, this is still fine for black, because b5, rook b8, rook b8. B5, knight b6, rook b8, and the bishop hangs. Fair. Okay. So actually, there is not much wrong with knight g6, but I, just on general principles, would prefer to play here. Make sure that this square has been taken away from the knight, and now we are good to develop. Either this way, or first even bishop b7. It's interesting that here knight d5 seems to become a possibility, and I would be surprised if this wasn't Mark's line, because this looks like the type of stuff that he would love to do, and me too as white, to be honest. So let's reflect on this for a second. Bishop e3. So maybe b5 wasn't that great after all. So knight g6 first. And if bishop b3 back. Okay, this seems to be the test of the pudding. So can we go bishop b4 here? Because what I want to do is, for example, if he comes into d5, take, and I will just castle. I guess that looks good. And if knight here, then I can just go b5 and I look fine here, right? Yeah, that's it. Okay, that was a little bit winging it. I actually didn't know this line, this bishop e3, knight d5 idea before. But I guess that is a good way to deal with this. So if bishop e3, knight d5, is it playable? What says you, engine? Okay, ed, knight a5, and we are even winning. To be honest, I really like these dilemmas, because to my mind, even if I just castle and they take, I take back, I'm a pawn up for nothing. Right? Although you have to be careful with tricks like bishop takes f7. But now I feel like we are getting a little bit too deep into a line that potentially is really not dangerous, because after knight d5, ed, I actually can move the knight without any dramas. So, probably in hindsight, I need to establish that the most dangerous line against this knight e7 setup is the bishop e3 one. And so make sure that We are aware of this, which right now is apparently not a threat, so we can just dodge it with knight g6, and after bishop b3, we can just move out with the bishop and be a happy chappy. Bishop e7 is good too. Knight a4, b5, knight b6, and rook b8. Good game. Bishop b6, don't lose like that. So knight a4, not b5. Yeah, I don't like this. I don't like bishop e7. Forget that. Scrap that. Bishop b4 seems to be the better choice here. a3. Bishop a5. Wow. Now I just learned something with you folks. Bishop a5. What a weird move. And yet somehow it really adds up, because now we are threatening to castle. We pull this thing out of knight a4 by covering b6. And if anything comes into d6, we just go like, nay, out. Awesome, man. I love this. Bishop b4, a3, bishop a5. What an awesome maneuver. And if bishop c5, I'm guessing bishop c7, yeah. And I'm threatening d6. So bishop d6 is forced, and you already know the drill here. Okay, that was massively winging it. Like, I wasn't actually prepared for this. I totally didn't know that bishop e3 was as dangerous as it turned out to be. So, one more time, last time, let's discuss this. Bishop e3, we went knight g6. And here we looked at bishop b3 as best. Knight a4 is met by b5, and it just supports our development. So bishop b3, which prepares for both of these. Bishop b4 refutes, or rather denies, both of these. And after a3, bishop a5, absolute happy days. And done. And with this, your Morra is done. And again, it's very easy to forget. So what you need to remember from this video is the motif structures. So what you need to remember is that if you ever get a bishop on d6 in your face, it's okay as long as you can trade it off, or you can go knight d7, knight g7, knight e7, and queen d6 and challenge it. It's never okay to have a knight in here, but as long as it's a bishop versus bishop face-off, we are totally cool. So that's just absolutely fine. If they play the very early bishop f4 variation, like I showed you, then we need to go bishop b4 to make sure that the knight is pinned. If they go bishop c4, then you can go a6 castles, knight e7, and then knight g6. If in this variation bishop e3 comes, you need to be conscious of the b6 square, and when everything for white seems to be ready to jump in various ways, in fact towards b6, that's when you play this extremely annoying bishop b4 move that gets ready to come back this way, and also allows black to castle if they want to go some crazy knight d5 business. Love and life. And then what you need to do now is to play it and play it and play it and get some experience in it. You're not going to win all your games. In fact, you might lose a few. But then you will understand how it works in depth. You have got a motif structure that you build the line around. It's always that way, that you understand how the pieces operate, and then you start to and try to memorize the exact move order. If you try to memorize exact move orders and hope that by doing so you will understand what's going on your chessboard, it's a lost cause. It's all over, Red Rover. But if you understand what you are playing for, then even if you forget your lines, you will be able to figure them out. That is the huge benefit of knowing what you are doing. And on that note, I will call off now the b4 lemon and the Morra gambit analysis. The Morra was a bit shaky, but we got there in the end. And I'm actually going to publish this on Lichess as an open study, so it's going to be available to all of you if you want to use it later on. For the time being, at least I'm taking that stance. And we'll see how we go. If this video series gets a good reception and generates interest in the public, then I will probably continue it, because I think this is a good way to go. I hope you guys liked it. I will be back with more soon. Bye.